All right, hello again, Fighting Irish fans. Welcome back to Football Fridays at the Eck, presented by Guinness. My name is Chris Palmquist, and on behalf of the Notre Dame Alumni Association, welcome back to campus. Next up, we're excited to welcome to Football Fridays two members of Holtz's Heroes who are on campus this weekend, helping to promote Meals with Muffet, the nationwide food drive during National Hunger Action Month, led by former women's basketball coach Muffet McGraw, Holtz's Heroes, Bread of Life Drives, and the Alumni Association. First up, from the class of 1987, a four-year starting quarterback here at Notre Dame and Super Bowl 22 champion, Steve Beuerlein. And Tim Brown had some flight issues coming in, but we got a great replacement, guys. I wouldn't even call him a replacement. We're excited to welcome the 1990 Lombardi Award winner and two-time consensus All-American from the class of 1991, Chris Zorich. Steve, Chris, thank you both so much for being here with us today.
FYI, he didn't tell me I was a replacement. Just let you know. He said, "Oh, Chris, I got this great idea." I'm like, "Oh, great!" But now I'm finding it out. Thanks, I appreciate that.
The truth comes out eventually, yeah.
I have no transition out of that, so I'm just going to dive into the questions. How's it feel to be back on campus after the year we had?
First off, how's everybody doing out there? By the way, are we? I mean, I don't feel the energy yet. We got to get. I know we don't want to peak too soon, but we got to get it going here. We got to have this one this weekend. What was the question? I forgot.
Just being back on campus.
It is fantastic to be back on campus. You know, I think, and I can't speak for Chris, but I think that when you're a student athlete here, the years go by so fast, and you're working so hard just to try to keep up with things that you don't really appreciate it as much as you do when you get out. And every year that I'm away, the next time I come back, it just seems to mean that much more to me. So can't get enough of it. I don't know what you think, Chris. What would you say?
Well, just like everyone else here now, I'm excited to kind of be back and watch Notre Dame football, right? Be here. This is something that I've only had a chance to watch the last, year. So having a chance to kind of spend time with folks here at the game tomorrow is just going to be great. And it's just nice to kind of see people back on campus, really.
Yes.
Thank you. And the cheap seats, I love them.
I pulled you guys from the bookstore basketball courts right now. You're part of Holtz's Heroes and have a little cornhole tournament going on. Tell us a little bit more about what you guys are hosting over there and why.
Well, there's a lot of different reasons for it. In a nutshell, we were both very fortunate to play for one of the greatest college football coaches of all time in Lou Holtz. And he's going to be here this weekend. It's a Holtz's Heroes weekend. And what the kind of motivation for it was back probably, 7 or 8 years ago when the concept first started was Coach wanted to have a weekend every year where all of his former players could kind of come back and have a mini reunion. And so he'd pick one game a year, and all of us would try to get back and just kind of rekindle old stories and memories and reconnect. But most importantly, we would talk about maybe some of our teammates and brothers, classmates that might be struggling a little bit. And Coach was always very interested in trying to find out who was in need of some kind of assistance, whether it be medical, financial, family struggles people might be having. And that's what kind of spurred the conversation for, used to be Lou's Lads, and now it's Holtz's Heroes. It's a foundation set up with several different purposes, but the primary purpose really is to ensure that former players of Coach Holtz and their families have the resources if one of their kids is able to get into Notre Dame. They don't want to ever have financial limitations be the reason why they can't come and experience Notre Dame. So there's scholarship funds raised for that. Also, there's the Bobby Satterfield Memorial Fund, which Bobby Satterfield was a former teammate of Chris's and I. And you can probably tell that story a little better than I, but the purpose of the foundation is to help players that are in desperate situations, for lack of a better term, that really need financial assistance for medical or family issues, or if one of the players unfortunately passes away, to take care of their family. So you can tell maybe a little bit more about the Bobby Satterfield and the story.
Sure, and it was really amazing. We had just came back from our visit at the White House after winning a national championship, and we had a team meeting here, and it was the day after, and Coach Holtz informed us that one of our teammates that we loved, Bobby Satterfield, had passed away, and you wouldn't have known if he was a starter, a great player, a walk-on, whatever it was. And in that in our meeting, I mean, everybody was crying, we were hugging, and that was really our first kind of experience with loss after being involved in this tremendous high. And so when they started the Bobby Satterfield Scholarship, and that's really what it was for, to kind of allow folks to have opportunities in honor of Bobby Satterfield.
Thank you for all you guys do there with Holtz's Heroes. Again, that's going on over on the bookstore courts until, 4:30 this afternoon? Is that right?
It said till 4. And so I think 4 would be probably the latest.
So after we're done here, be sure.
Yeah, head on over there,
across.
check it out. It's the first event that we've actually had in conjunction with Holtz's Heroes on one of the reunion weekends. We had a cornhole tournament going over there. I was saying earlier that everybody else was playing for second, but now since Chris and I are over here, the championship is still up in the air. We were going to walk away with it, for
Says
sure.
the quarterback, right?
That's right.
Did you even lose the game?
Rule number 1, never get into a throwing game with a thrower. That's a rule. Remember that, okay, young lady? Can you remember that?
You guys talked about the bond that you guys still have with Coach Holtz over the 30 years plus since he coached you. Everyone has a Coach Holtz story, and I got to ask, what's your go-to Coach Holtz story?
Well, there's so many. I mean, there are so many Coach Holtz stories. I think the go-to one that I always talk about is the first time I actually met Coach Holtz. And some of you older Notre Dame fans out there will remember that during my years here at Notre Dame, my first 3 years under Jerry Faust, we didn't have a whole lot to be excited about. And I'm sure that there might even be 1 or 2 people that are in this crowd that might have been cursing me in the 1985 season because of how poorly I was playing. There's one right up here in the front. That was Jerry Faust's last year at Notre Dame. Well, there's a reason for it, by the way. I was a sophomore All-American the year before, but I played most of that season with a shoulder injury that was misdiagnosed through the season and after the season, and I ended up having a pretty major shoulder surgery in April or May of that off season prior to my junior year football season. It was a 4-month rehab. That put my rehab into summer camp. I was in no position to play. I was not physically ready to play, but it was Jerry Faust last year, and he didn't give me the option to redshirt. They made me go out and play. And I ended up having a terrible year. I could not make the throws that I needed to make to play quarterback at this level. So I had a terrible year. I mean, and I ended up, by the end of the season, Terry Andresiak and I were splitting time, and I thought my career was over, pretty much. Lou Holtz gets hired. He calls me into his office for the first meeting that I've ever had with this man. And I think it's going to be one of those meetings where he says, hey, Beuerlein, we appreciate all you've done for Notre Dame. You've been a great leader, blah, blah, blah. But we're going to move a different direction, and we'll see what happens. Well, I get into his office, and immediately he runs over to me, and he shakes my hand. He said, Steve Beuerlein, it's a pleasure to meet you, son. Come on in, have a seat. So I'm like, okay. Well, I go down and sit down across the desk from him, and he looks me right in the eye, and he points at me, and he says, Steve Beuerlein, you are going to be my quarterback at the University of Notre Dame. What do you think about that, son? And I said, Coach, this is amazing. I really wasn't expecting, good news. I was expecting to be kind of a sad meeting. He goes, well, I'm going to tell you something, Beuerlein. We got a young man by the name of Tim Brown on the outside, and he's pretty good. And you're the only guy that can get the football to him. So you're going to get a chance to play. And he said, I'll tell you something else, Beuerlein. If you do play, we're going to throw the ball more than I like to, And he said, that's because we've got him out there and we want to get the football to him, so we have to throw it. So you're going to do it, and you will not throw any you will not throw more than 6 interceptions the whole year. And I said, Coach, this is like a dream come true. You're telling me that I'm going to play or going to throw the ball, and I'm not going to throw any interceptions? How do you know all that stuff? I mean, is it the system? And he goes, oh, trust me, Beuerlein, we don't need to get into details. Don't worry about it. Just trust me. And I said, no, Coach, I got to know. I mean, what is it? He said, well, if you really need to know, Beuerlein, as soon as you throw interception number 6, your butt's on the bench. You're not going to be playing anymore. So you're done. So I got the message very quickly that that was not going to be tolerated. And the great thing about it was I did get healthy. I was able to go out and play, and I ended up becoming a 4th-round draft choice and had a 17-year career in the NFL. And I owe it all to Lou Holt just giving me that opportunity. So.
Well, unfortunately, my story isn't as entertaining as Steve's. The story I'm going to tell is when he first moved me to from linebacker to defensive line. Now, I came in, I went to high school at Chicago Vocational High School where Dick Butkus went to high school. Like, I knew what a linebacker was going to be, and that's what I wanted to be. And I came here, I thought I was a great player, but I sucked at linebacker. I was terrible. And I thought I was never going to play here. And then Coach Holtz put me at defensive line, and he said, just think about it. If you play well, you can think about making that transition. I was okay, great. So I had 1 day of practice. I thought I did okay. And at the end of practice, he called everybody up, and he was kind of telling us what we're going to do that week. And the last part was, I think we found our new nose guard.
Let's see your Lou Holtz imitation.
Well,
Let's do it. Come on.
Sing. I mean, that's Lou Holtz, right? He's like, I think we found our new nose guard. I'm looking around going, man, I wonder who that is. He started talking about him, and he's going to be a great player. And I'm like, man, I wonder who that is. He said, Chris Zorich, how do you feel about being our new nose guard? And I was like, whoa, in front of the whole team, which I couldn't say no. And then you fast forward a couple years, and I was very fortunate enough to be part of the College Football Hall of Fame because Lou Holtz, kind of the same thing Steve talked about. He had the foresight to move me from linebacker to defensive line, and I was very, very fortunate.
Became an All-American, too, by the way.
Two-time
All-American.
Don't short, Chris. We'll leave some time for audience questions, so be thinking about them. But before we get to that, Chris, you mentioned your move from linebacker to line. You ended up an All-American and starting on the national championship team there in '88. What are your memories of that season and the role that you played on that team?
It was really an amazing year, and the thing I remember most about it is that we were expected to win, and so at the time when it was happening, we didn't realize how special it was until we come back now and 10, 20, 30 years later, but we always thought we were going to win, and I think we went on a 23-game winning streak, and we just thought we were never going to lose. And so it wasn't really a big deal that we were beating these teams constantly. And it was just this amazing feeling because we didn't know how special, we didn't know how great we were until years later. And then we won a national championship, and we thought we weren't going to lose. The following year, we only lost 1 game. And so we just had this attitude that we were never going to lose. And so when I think about that time, it's great because we had a chance to kind of share all that success, obviously, with students and alumni. But what was really interesting was the idea when we come back, we don't talk about who scored touchdowns or who made tackles. We're just having a good time. So the idea that kind of success breeds happiness and excitement and everything else is so true. And so anytime we get back, it's more about having fun and hanging out than kind of talk about wins and losses.
And Steve, you mentioned some of the ups and downs that you went through, some of the injuries that you battled during your time here, but you can say that you are one of 2 Fighting Irish quarterbacks with a perfect 4-0 mark against USC. So,
nice.
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
That's right.
What are some of your favorite memories about your playing days here?
Well, first of all, I come from Southern California, so that made going home easy all the time. I could always go home, and I believe me, I live out in USC country, and by the way, they are the most obnoxious people on the planet. They really are. And it's just, there's only this one pocket of the United States that likes USC, and it's Southern California. I mean, that's it. They think they run the world, but they don't realize that once they get out of Southern California, they don't have any credibility anywhere. And I always remind them of that. I'm like, anywhere you go in the world, you can find a Notre Dame club, and you're going to be able to get in the door anywhere if there's any kind of a Notre Dame connection. Once you leave Southern California, you're nothing. But it was always fun. I've beaten them 4 out of 4 times. That was really the highlight of my career. And the last one was the 1986 come-from-behind win out at the Coliseum. It was the last game of my college career, and it was the highlight of my college career because coming off my junior year where I really didn't think I'd ever play football again. Now, mind you, the NFL draft back in those days was 12 rounds. And I had fallen from being a potential high draft choice to not even being on the draft board of most teams in the NFL after my junior year. So after that, before Coach Holtz got there, I thought my football career was over. And then I got the chance under Coach Holtz to play my senior year. And even though we went 5-6, we played our hearts out. And I mean, anybody that was in that stadium, that Michigan game, the first game of Lou Holtz's career here at Notre Dame, you knew immediately that we were a different team. We knew we were a different team. And to finish it up on that note, we were going into the Coliseum. We knew we weren't going to have a bowl game, but we always went out to California and spent 4 days over Thanksgiving out there. It was kind of a tradition every other year. And it just so timed out. That was going to be the last game of my career at Notre Dame. And so a lot of time to really reflect and think about it. And there's so many other stories. If we have time, maybe I'll get into one of them about what happened in that game and the night before conversation I had with Lou Holtz. But the bottom line is that we got down, and I was pulled from that game in the second quarter. And then I was put back in the middle of the third quarter. We were down 17 points. And we came back and won the game on a last-second John Carney field goal, 38-37. And so it was the absolute dream way to end the career. And it really, Coach Holtz always refers to it as kind of the game that really catapulted or was a catalyst to Notre Dame starting to come back and really starting to believe that they could be something special or that we could be something special.
And if I could just comment on what Steve was saying, it's really interesting because as young kids, we really didn't know kind of the history of Notre Dame. And the last several years, our group has had a chance to kind of spend more time with the older players. And it's
not
amazing.
Not that much older.
It's amazing to see what Coach Holtz was able to do because, I mean, Steve talked about kind of rough years with Faust. And had those years not happened, I mean, we wouldn't have had that senior leadership that we needed to win a national championship. And so when folks talk about kind of that national championship time and all those wins, you know, if not for these guys, we would not have been able to have that foundation. And so it's so interesting, and we always talk about how kind of that win for the national championship wasn't just on our shoulders, it was on the shoulders of our brothers that played before us.
Thank you for the compliment there. As another way of saying that our poor performance or underachievement is what brought Lou Holtz here. So that was a gift. That was our gift to you, yes.
Well, we all thank you for your dedication.
Everybody thanked me for that, yeah.
I want to leave some time for your questions. We have Joanne out here with a microphone. Put your hand up. She'll run around. We'll take a few.
I just wondered if Steve could give us more insight into the interaction between himself and Coach Holtz during that Southern California game, because I know I know it's very interesting.
Yes, I shouldn't have even said anything. It always comes up anyway. So the conversation I had with him before the game, he came into my hotel room. We were staying at the Newport Beach Marriott in Orange County, which is about 30 minutes from where I live now. He came into my room, and it was kind of like a father-son talk, where he just, for a half hour, he was in my hotel room just telling me how proud he was of me and how I stepped up and established myself as a guy that could definitely play at the next level, and the leadership and just the compliments that he showered on me that night. I was, really overwhelmed. I'll never forget the conversation, and just felt so grateful to have had that experience. And then he got up to leave the room, and he turns around and he looks at me and he says, "Oh, and one more thing, Beuerlein." He goes, "Do you remember the first time that we ever met?" And I said, "Yeah, I do, Coach. Yes, sir." And he said, "Do you remember the conversation we had and I told you how many interceptions that you would not throw?" And I said, I do, Coach." And he said, "Well, how many did I tell you?" And I said, "Coach, you told me that as soon as I threw 6 interceptions, I would be done playing." And he goes, "Good memory, Beuerlein. How many interceptions have you thrown?" And I said, "I've thrown 6. He said, "So what we're saying is that you're living on borrowed time right now." So I said, "I guess you could say that." And I laughed. I thought he was joking. He goes, "Okay, well, just so you know, if you throw an interception tomorrow, I'm pulling you out. You're done. Whoa. See you later. Good night." And I said, "Coach, no. I said, "Coach, you can't say that to me the night before the game. I mean, you can't just tell me if I throw an interception, you're going to pull me out of the game." He said, "Well, of course I can. I'll say it again if you'd like me to. If you throw an interception, I'm pulling you out." And so I said, "Wow." He goes, "Sleep well. Good night. See you later." And he shuts the door. So, of course, what ends up happening, middle of the second quarter, I go out there, and it's, we're down by a touchdown or something, and I throw a quick out to the left side, and they had a corner by the name of Lou Brock Jr., the son of the legendary Lou Brock baseball player, who was pretty fast. He picks it off and takes it for a touchdown. So immediately, my first thought is, do not go anywhere near Coach Holtz. But I try to walk to the sideline over here, and he's over this way, and he's, "Beuerlein, come here, son, Beuerlein." Calls me over, he puts his hands up on my shoulders, and he says, "I got nothing to say, son. You're done for the day. Take a seat."
Whoa.
So he pulls me out of the game.
Oh, my God.
And I'm sitting in the Coliseum in front of probably 200 of my closest family and friends that are all there to support me in my last game, and I think this is the way it's going to end. I'm literally on the bench, and I'm crying. I'm just like, it can't end this way. It can't end this way. We go in at halftime, and I'm thinking he's going to put me in to start the second half. He lets Terry Andresiak start the second half, and I literally am thinking it's over. And just cannot process all of it. Then all of a sudden, after like the second series of the third quarter, this blur comes out from the side, and it's Coach Holtz, and he's got his hat on backwards. He's like, "Are you ready to play some football, son?" I said, "Yes, sir, please put me back in. You won't." He goes, "Get your butt out there and win us a football game." So I go out there, and we end up having this most amazing comeback. We win on the last play of the game, and it ends up being the greatest story ever. You
Wow,
know?
that's awesome. That is awesome.
Hey, Chris.
Oh, my gosh. Kathleen, how are you?
Fine. I want you to tell everybody here
How awesome you are?
No. Your recruiting story about when Coach comes to your home and tells you he wants you to come to Notre Dame, and you say, "I can't."
Wow.
Please tell them that story.
First of all, hello. Okay, well, we'll have a chance to talk later. So, Kathleen's talking about this crazy story so kind of where I grew up, a lot of folks didn't go to college. It was a big deal if you graduated from high school. So, it actually wasn't Coach Holtz, it was an assistant coach. Came to my high school, and now I mentioned before, I went to Chicago Vocational High School. So those folks who are coming from Chicago, that's the school that's on the right-hand side when you come into and you're paying like a $100 toll or $8 toll or something like that coming into South Bend. That's where my high school is. And it's 90 miles away, okay, from this campus. So the assistant coach comes and says, "Son, how would you like to attend the University of Notre Dame?" I was like, "Well, I would love to, but my mom doesn't like to fly." And he kind of looked at me kind of strange and said, "What do you mean your mom doesn't like to fly?" And this is exactly what I said. I said, "Well, sir, there's no way my mom would fly to France to see me play." And he kind of looked, he's like, "What do you mean fly?" And I was like, "Well, you guys got the humpback guy in that big church, right?" And I'm sure he's looking at the screen. He's like, "I don't know if we can get this guy." So thank you, Kathleen. But it's so interesting because, like, I didn't know about college, right? I didn't know about having a chance to, like, earn a scholarship to attend. But he left me, like, all this information. wound up just kind of consuming it and realizing how special this place was. And the only reason, I didn't think I was going to play a lot, the only reason why I came here was because at that time the graduation rate for student athletes was 98.98. So I knew that if I went here, I would have a chance to graduate from college and go back to Chicago and get a great job and get my mom out of the neighborhood. But it's an amazing story because it just talks about kind of like how naive I was when I got to this campus because I had no clue about Notre Dame. But now I love it, so thank you, Kathleen.
And your mom wouldn't have to fly.
That's true, and my mom did not have to fly to see me play, so.
You guys mentioned some of the legends who came before you. We're lucky enough to have two of them ready to take your seats here in just a second. George Gedeke and Terry Hanratty from the '66 national championship teams.
Where's Terry Hanratty?
But
Terry.
But before I let you guys off the hot seat here, we've had two pretty nail-biting games so far this season. We had Purdue in town this weekend. Give us your quick predictions for the game tomorrow.
Well, I'll tell you, I really expect us to wake up tomorrow. We have to. It turns out the Florida State game, I think, was an aberration. Florida State got beat by Jacksonville State last week, and Jacksonville State got hammered by UAB, who got hammered by Alabama. So Florida State is not that good. And then we obviously looked very average in a game that we should have had control of last week. So I think hopefully Coach Kelly woke that team up and has done a good job preparing them for the game, and will come out and play like a Notre Dame football team should against a pretty good Purdue team. I mean, they're 2-0, and they're going to come in here after watching that film from last week, and they're going to think they can beat Notre Dame. So we've got to deliver the message early that it's going to be a long day for the Boilermakers. So that's what's got to happen tomorrow, I think.
I love it. I'm fired up. I agree, obviously, with Steve, but the thing that I look forward to is them understanding how important this game is. When you look on our schedule, there were a couple games that may have been important down the road, but now all of a sudden our backs are against the wall, and we need this victory like we need oxygen. So the idea that these guys are going to go out and give 100,000%, that has to happen, because if that doesn't happen, I'm not sure where we're going to go. And we may win, but we need to win decisively so we can kind of show folks what Notre Dame is all about and not being average, because I hate being average. I just really, really hate being average.
Yeah, and the other thing I think to play off of that is, when you were winning national championships, you said you didn't know what it felt like to lose. Losing was not an option. My first 3 years at Notre Dame were the exact opposite. We were hoping to win. This team has to have a swagger. You've got to come into games confident. You don't want to be cocky, but a little bit of cockiness is good. The good teams all have a little bit of cockiness where they walk out on the field and they say, yeah, that's right, we're here. And it's going to be a long day for you. And you're going to regret being here. That's the attitude they have to have. And that's the attitude you guys had, I know. Just ask Miami. Just ask all the other teams you beat that year. They showed up, and the other team knew that they were in for a long day. So that's important.
All right, Steve Beuerlein and Chris Zorich, everybody, thank you for coming out.